In the tangled webs of deceit and loyalty, a man named Ethan discovers his wife Isabel's secret rendezvous, unraveling a saga of betrayal that shakes the very foundation of his world. Work was hard. On Friday, a factory machine broke down. I spent the majority of the day with the engineering team, troubleshooting hardware and software difficulties that depleted us all. I've been running a printing company in northern Sydney for the past 12 years. That evening, I parked in the garage, fatigued and ready for the day to finish. Running a print shop is always exhausting. At home, I was unhappy that my 15-year-old wife, Isabel, had not been affectionate lately. I am very touchy-feely, and small gestures energize me. Recently, Isabel has been distant and grumpy. She enjoys quality time and my attention, which I try to provide. But it is difficult when she pushes me away, and I have a firm to run. I'm Ethan, 42, and Isabel and I have 2 daughters. Lena, our oldest, is 18 and a younger version of her mother, Smart. She is ambitious and in her 3rd year of engineering at university. Following graduation, she hopes to contribute to the design of new printing presses. Our second daughter, Molly, is a free spirit. Smart, yet unmotivated. A social butterfly who is hooked to her phone. Both girls went gone for the weekend, leaving Isabel and me alone. I thought on the week, intending to fix our concerns over cocktails and chat. I stepped out of my truck, grabbed my luggage and went to the kitchen. Isabel was not around, so I poured myself a cracker and cola, turned on some mellow music, and tried to relax. The faulty equipment appeared to be rectified, but the lost revenue would cost us at least $10,000 more, if not repaired properly the following week. This was a huge loss for my Sydney market team. Hearing movement. I noticed Isabel enter the room. I remarked, "You look good, my love," and she smiled back. I sighed and took a sip. "Sorry, Lou. It's been a tough day. I don't have enough energy to go out tonight." She smiled again, but this time there was no love in her eyes. My day got progressively worse. "Okay, Cam," she responded with a trembling voice. "I had not planned on bringing you with me." I was perplexed. We rarely went out independently, and she never dressed this way for a girls' night out. "Were you not?" I asked, taking a large sip. "Why are you dressed like you're on a special date?" Isabel seemed unsure. "Ethan," she paused. "Are you breaking up with me?" I asked. Isabel appeared horrified. "Of course not, Cam," she reached out, but I backed away, laughing cruelly. "Now you're going to tell me you have to do it on your own. That you deserved it, after raising our children and committing to our family." I gazed at her large bag on the table. "According to your bag, you did not intend to return home tonight. It is good to see you leaving our marriage so simply, Cam." She stopped gazing at me. I remained mute. She exhaled. "We both work really hard, and I know you're doing it for us. But I'll only be seeing Derek for a little period." "Derek?" "Derek valued your position as general counsel. Derek felt valuable as a married father of 3 children under the age of 10. I asked for a while. My wife responded, panic in her eyes. She was startled that I knew who her lover was. She exhaled. "Yes, Cam, that is Derek. He's been nice to me while you haven't been around." "Crap." I exploded. "What?" Isabel was shocked. "You have heard me. I said, crap. You are justifying an affair. We both work hard, but claiming I wasn't present is a lie and you know it. You have been keeping your distance. I attempted to spend time with you, but you always pushed me away. Now I see why you can't fool me." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Ethan, I am not attacking you." She stuttered. "Tonight. This weekend was meant to be our first experience." She replied, embarrassed. "Right. So you're going to cheat on me for the entire weekend, not just one night." I stared at her and went into the kitchen for another glass. Despite my exhaustion from work, I poured a double crack, and Isabel arrived in the doorway, angry yet unafraid. "Ethan, I am not a strumpet. Unlike you and your first love, Stella, I've never dated another man. Derek claims I am not cheating because I am informing you. It is only cheating if I conceal it. Dragging Stella into this is a low blow." I almost let out a growl. She looked away. And you are mistaken. It is cheating if I do not accept it. And I do not. Is your new man telling his wife the same? I do not know. She stammered while glancing at her sneakers. I snorted and chugged my drink before turning to face her. Her expression was a mixture of emotions. He is probably lying about being unavailable. Was he kissing you? What? She asked. Did Derek kiss you? I stressed. She reddened. Yes. Well, that says it all. You rejected me while moving closer to another man. We're finished. I walked out onto the back terrace and slammed the door. I sat on the back veranda thinking of the day I wanted to be with my wife, but she betrayed me. After about 5 minutes, Isabel emerged, taking a softer approach. I love you, Cam, but I need this. I felt stuck for the past year. Derek understands. It won't take long. I gazed into the yard. No, Isabel, you should have turned to me. I was your best friend, your partner. But you gave yourself to another guy, depriving me of the opportunity to be there for you. Now I'm not sure if I'll be able to be near you again. She did not move, Ethan. She stated softly but firmly. You cannot leave, Derek says. If you do, I will accept everything. I'll acquire half your business, the house, and the kids, and I'll use them against you. Her voice became more assertive as she placed her hand on my shoulder. I moved away from her, disgusted. Would you do that to your loved one? You cheated and threatened me, and you think you'll get away with it. I let out a growl. I would not want that. But Derek says in court that I will win. You do not have an option. I will sort things out and get back to you. You are stronger than me. For the second time, I rose abruptly. Hatred is in my eyes. I glanced at her, still feeling the affection. But my rage took control. You selfish and unfaithful woman, I hissed. She stepped back. You dare to declare love, assuming I would remain married to you after this. Do you believe I have no choice? Well, screw you. I'm not sure who you are anymore. You aren't the woman I married. The woman I loved would never turn our children against me. Who are you? Can I? She stuttered. I let the rage go, choosing a sensible way to see if we could reason with her. If you love me, Isabel, please end this now. I'm not sure whether we can save our marriage after you informed me you were carnal with another man. If you cancel it and we go to counseling, I pledge to attempt to understand and forgive your treachery. I committed betrayal, she whispered. Yes, counseling, I repeated. Our marriage is dying. Call it off and schedule counseling immediately away. I'll phone Stella right now and ask her to help. Isabel highlighted Stella, my first love, who later became a good friend. As well as her husband, Max. Stella, a therapist, could help us. No, Cam, I don't want Stella involved, she declared forcefully. I can understand how angry you are. You may believe I don't, but I do. I attempted to respond, but she interrupted. Let me finish. You may believe I do not love you, but I do. Those threats were incorrect, but they were correct. I glanced at her, wondering what had happened to the woman I'd married. I will make you a bargain. I'm sorry I wounded you, but I'm going with Derek this weekend. We can go to counseling once we're finished. If it's important to you, we'll go there. How about the girls? I asked. How about them? She responded. How do we tell them we are splitting up? I asked indifferently. We aren't breaking up, she said, sighing. Derek and I will eventually go our separate ways. The girls will be unaffected. What about me, while you are with Derek? What about me? Where is the affection for me? I asked. What do you mean? Isabel hesitated. I am affectionate and you've backed away. You haven't kissed me for 2 weeks. What should I do? I said. She stared at me as if she had overlooked my wants. I don't know, she answered, lowering her gaze. Derek thinks I should be his for now. I erupted in frustration, rage, and grief. To heck with Derek denying you your husband because of him. Is this fair? I shouted. I threw the glass toward the wall, shattering it. I slumped onto a chair, feeling devastated. After a few minutes, a car horn blared outside. I looked at Isabel and saw indecision for the first time. Simply go away, I whispered. When I turned back, she was gone. I remained in my seat for half an hour, devastated. My telephone rang. It was my daughter, Lena. She had forgotten her suitcase while on her way home with Finn. Sorry, Dad. Mom's phone went into voicemail, so I called you. She said, it's all right, honey. Your mother is not home, but I'll have your luggage ready. I responded, trying to seem normal. Daddy? She paused. Who is Derek? I apologize. I intended Finn. I stammered, taken off guard. What's happening? She inquired, concerned. I didn't respond. Lena, I am simply having a rough day. First, I had issues at work. Then, your mother and I had a fight. I am just emotional, I responded. I didn't want to lie. But neither did I want to tell my 18-year-old daughter the entire tale. Dad, stop skirting the truth. What did Mom do? Her tone sounded accusatory. It does not matter, honey. I will be all right. I will get your bag ready. Please do not let our troubles ruin your weekend. Love you, Lena. I hurriedly hung up, feeling guilty. I went inside, sprayed water on my face. Grabbed Lena's bag and set it at the garage door. I was cleaning up glass shards when Lena came out. Are you okay, Daddy? She inquired, concerned. Isabel had looked at me in that way before. But not tonight. Sure, honey. I placed your bag in its normal location. I spoke plainly, sweeping the glass. Finn stood in the doorway, frowning. Lena sat across from me and took my hands. You're not okay? Dad. Mom called me back after I spoke with you. It sounded like she was not alone. What's happening? She noticed the brokenness in my eyes. That damn cow. She almost yelled. What's wrong, baby? Finn asked. He stared at me. I felt elderly and depressed. My mother is cheating on my father, she said. No, seriously? Finn said. Lena and Finn gazed at me. I nodded slowly. She issued me an ultimatum and went with her lover before you phoned. I admitted they remained with me. Later, Stella and Max arrived with Thai takeout crack and champagne. I informed them about Isabel's betrayal. Dad? Lena asked. Doesn't Mom recall the prenup? My parents provided funds for my printing business. And their lawyers drafted a prenuptial agreement. If one spouse cheated, they would only receive approximately 15% of the marital property. The house, cars, and children would all go to the opposing party. The company kept out of any separation or divorce. I shake my head. Mom stated it wasn't cheating to tell me. I said. Lena snorted. Cheating is cheating whether she informs you or not. She's been emotionally cheating for several months. Molly and I realized something was awry. I nodded. My God, Molly, I need to talk to her. Let her know things will be fine. Lena grabbed my hand. Dad, please do not lie. It is not going to be okay. Mama erased something in you today. And I'm not sure I can forgive her. She's still your mom, I said, my voice whining. Mother or not, there are no excuses for what she did. Lena spoke fiercely, then softened. Molly and I will be fine. I will talk to her in the morning. She was also aware that something was awry. We ate, and despite my current mood, I felt better. After talking with Lena, Finn, Stella, and Max. Everyone. Do you mind if I talk with Ethan for a while? Stella inquired later, as the subject had drifted away from Isabel. The others went in. Stella sat across from me. Ethan, you have an amazing daughter. She added with a smile. I nodded while glancing at Stella. My first love was a stunning woman with red hair. We dated in high school till college split us up. She fell for Max, and I met Isabel and fell madly in love with her. Stella and I remained close friends and never considered compromising our spouses. Our children's relationships reinforced our familial tie. Lena and Finn were aware that Stella and I had dated. And they were now sleeping together. But we didn't meddle because they cared genuinely about each other. Lena told us that she offered Finn her purity as an 18th birthday present. Stella touched my leg, pulling me back into the present. How are you doing, Cam? Do not lie. I know you better than anyone. I do not know, Stella. I knew things were difficult, but I gestured vaguely. I still adore her, but I despised what she did. I want to shout, cry, and hurt both her and her partner, but I still love her. I said, agonized. Stella nodded, shifting into therapist mode. How are you going to handle it, Cam? Stella cut the crap. It does not work for me. I know you too well. I smirked, sadly. I need to end my relationship or possibly get divorced. Honoring the prenuptial agreement, I begged her to stay and offered counseling. But she threatened to seize everything and use the daughters against me. Stella nodded. You're correct. I am unable to serve as your counselor. I am too close to both of you. Tomorrow, we'll locate someone for you to talk to, but Max and I will be with you through this. Finn and Max are presumably attempting to calm Lena down. I haven't seen her so angry since Candy Taylor invited Finn to the junior high dance. She laughed. I laughed quietly. Thank you, Stella. I am sorry you are in the middle of this. Do not worry, Cam. We are here for you. If you had dumped Isabel, we would have supported her in the same way. I would never. I said. Stella grinned. I know you and Max are the most devoted individuals I know. Max was short, stocky, and strong, with blonde hair and blue eyes. I had thick brown hair and was tall and tidy. I believe that is why I fell in love with him. He reminded me of you. She spoke wistfully. We laughed together, forming a close connection. We spent the next hour discussing my sentiments of loss, betrayal, fury, and apathy. Stella understood. Later, we went inside and discovered Finn and Lena cuddling on the couch. Max was watching a movie. Hello, everyone. I greeted. Lena hugged me. Are you okay, Daddy? I looked at Stella, and she smiled. No, honey, I'm not okay. But I am delighted you are all here. Dad, Finn, and I are staying tonight. We do not want you to be alone. But how about your weekend? I asked. Finn brushed it off. Ethan, there is nowhere Lena and I would rather be. We can reschedule this weekend. Lena was correct. We are needed here. I did not argue that evening. Stella and Max bid farewell and promised to bring breakfast. I said goodnight to Lena and Finn, then showered and read in bed to keep myself entertained. We will bring you coffee in the morning, Daddy, she informed me. I know I won't sleep well, and I can only guess how you'll do. I smiled sadly, thanked Lena, hugged her, kissed her forehead, and returned to my room. After a shower, I changed into my work attire and sighed at the sight of Isabel everywhere. I threw her belongings on the floor, intending to box them up the next day. I was lying in bed, reading on my iPad, when my phone rang. It was Max, not Isabel, who checked in on me. I thanked him with a thumbs-up emoji, and he replied. They'll see me tomorrow, just as I put down my phone. I used the Find My Phone app and rang Isabel's phone. It was 2 hours away, in the Blue Mountains. I captured a screenshot as proof. I reviewed the footage that our Swan security system had recorded. The camera caught Isabel and me discussing her adultery, while another captured a man stepping out of a BMW, kissing Isabel, and driving away with her. I had video confirmation of her departing to be with Derek Fellworth, as well as the whereabouts of her phone. I took out my laptop, signed into Swan Security, and exported the recordings while sending an email to my lawyer about beginning the divorce process. Isabel called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was chilling. Ethan, Derek, and I heard my phone beep. Do not do something silly. We'll finish eventually, and then we can discuss. If you do not follow my directions, Derek will annihilate you, and I will take everything. Trust me, it won't last forever, but if you blab, I'll tear you apart till you've lost everything. When Isabel and I are finished, she will return to you. Play ball, and everything will be okay. I heard them both laughing. I was surprised, but determined. I redrafted the email, urging that Isabel be served with divorce papers at work and that Derek be sued. Although Australia does not have an alienation of attachment statute, I wanted my lawyer to find a way to hurt them. I also planned to claim for lost income as a result of the situation's influence on my business. I clicked publish, but then realized I didn't have Derek's wife's information. If I did, I would inform her about Derek's adultery. I slept poorly, tossing and turning all night. I heard Lena and Finn wake up early. Finn went to fetch coffee, while I dressed and headed to the kitchen. Lena held me tightly and inquired whether I had slept. I shook my head. She said, "Me neither." I tried, but I simply couldn't. I don't understand how Mom could do this to all of us, including you. We discussed her academic courses, but avoided the subject until Finn returned with 3 huge coffees. I sipped my cappuccino, loving the chocolate topping. Lena and I sighed in unison. Finn laughed. "You are both the same." He became serious. "So, you haven't slept either?" "No." I was engaged messaging the lawyer when I received a voicemail from Isabel. After pinging her phone, I informed her that I was initiating divorce proceedings. I checked the voicemail. Isabel and Derek had left me, and Lena struggled to keep back tears. "That woman is not my mother," she murmured calmly, wiping her tears. "My mother would never insult my father or allow another man to degrade him." Finn and I agreed. Around 10 a.m., we wondered where Stella and Max were. They promised breakfast about 9. An hour later, Finn attempted to phone them, but was unable to connect. I called Zoe at their usual cafe, and she confirmed that they picked up breakfast at 8:30. I experienced intense anxiousness. I was just about to go hunt for them when Finn's phone rang. He responded and then collapsed, pale. I took the telephone. "This is Ethan Other." "Who am I talking to?" I asked Mr. Other. "This is Oliver, a police constable. I have some horrible news. Finn's parents were involved in a major accident." I inhaled hard, seeing Finn nearly unconscious on the ground. Lena clutches him desperately. Stellaran. Maximum. "All right, Constable." I asked Mr. Other. "Can Finn give you permission to speak on his behalf?" Finn managed to say yes. The officer proceeded. At 8:45 a.m., their vehicle crashed with an out-of-control semi-trailer. The automobile was ruined. Mrs. Giddings is undergoing surgery, but Mr. Giddings did not survive. I became pale and collapsed to the ground. Max had died and Stella was undergoing surgery. I cleared my throat. "What hospital?" Lena went into a frenzy. I started inquiring about the hospital. I swallowed hard, trying to remain cool. "They are in the Royal North Shore Hospital." "Will you and Finn arrive soon?" she inquired in her voice. "Sad?" "Yes," I stammered while getting specific instructions. 5 minutes later, we were out the door. We arrived at the trauma unit within half an hour. The nurses attempted to reassure us. We inquired about Stella's condition, Max's body, and the other driver, Constable Sharp, who arrived and introduced herself. Finn agreed to let me represent him, and she described the specifics of the crash. The semi-trailer had collided with their car, killing Max instantaneously and seriously wounding Stella. Stella suffered a skull fracture, several lacerations, broken legs, and lost her left arm. The surgical team was trying to save her. She had suffered serious blood loss. But the way her arms were positioned during the incident helped keep her from bleeding out. The day was filled with phone calls and conversations. Finn stayed with me and helped me make calls to family. Lena contacted Molly, who arrived an hour later, cuddling Finn and crying with Lena. She eventually looked up at us. "Where is Mom?" Molly inquired innocently. Lena and I exchanged looks. "She's not coming," Lena lamented bitterly. Molly gazed at us, her countenance grim. "Is it due of Derek?" "Molly, do you know anything about your mom and Derek?" I asked gently. Molly nodded as tears streamed down her cheeks. "A few weeks back, I noticed Mom wearing new underpants. I inquired whether it was for you, Dad. She soon revealed that it was for a date with Derek." "Why didn't you say anything?" Lena asked her in an accusatory tone. "I wasn't sure what to do. I avoided going home because I didn't want to face either of you." "Sorry, Dad." Molly said this while staring at me. I hugged her. "It's all right, baby girl. I only found out yesterday night." She started crying. "I'm so sorry, Daddy." Perhaps if I had said something, Stella and Uncle Max would not have done so. She broke down, so we merely left to shower and change. I brought Lena and Molly home to clean up. Then Lena drove back to the hospital with Molly. And I arrived around 4 a.m. Son Stella was brought in after surgery. She was bruised and in critical condition, but she survived. She would stay in the ICU for a few days to prevent brain damage. Despite his anguish, Finn was cordial to the doctors, requesting to meet the surgeons who had saved his mother's life. I was proud of him and hoped he would become my son-in-law eventually. We spent the day in the hospital. I brought my laptop and phone chargers to confirm that the divorce papers were ready for delivery to Eldon Derek and his workplace on Monday. I had an excellent lawyer. I'd say better than Derek. I also asked my managers to handle work over the weekend owing to our family tragedy. One positive point was that one of my team members repaired the broken car from Friday. In the afternoon, we began preparing Max's funeral with Finn. He asked their family lawyer for guidance. Hazel, Stella's mother, joined us later. She hugged her grandson and treated me like a son. Hazel informed us that Camille, Max's mother, would be visiting at the end of the week. We chatted casually in the hospital waiting area, reminiscing and planning. When I inquired if we needed to move, the nurse said we could stay as long as it wasn't too crowded. Recognizing our urge to be close, Stella's time flew by while we talked. Eldon was only mentioned in passing at roughly 8 p.m. Sunday. My phone rang and I answered it without looking. "Hey, is this Ethan Uther?" I stated this while seeing Finn hug Lena. "That is no way to meet your wife," Eldon scolded. "I told you not to create a fuss or you'd regret it. Derek will kick you out if you say anything." "Where are you, Ethan?" "You are meant to be home." I had no idea what had happened to Eldon over the weekend. But the woman on the phone looked nothing like the one I'd seen Friday night. "Eldon," I said with scorn, silencing the audience. "It's me." "Where are you now, among the gals? If you tell them anything, I'll turn them on you. So go home or you'll be sorry." I hung up in mid-sentence, disinterested in threats. Tomorrow, Eldon's carefully planned narrative would unravel. "The strumpet just arrived home," I replied, shrugging. "We heard her father," Molly replied gently. "I'm not sure why you even responded." I had spent hours conversing with Molly, who apologized several times for not saying anything sooner. She was almost as angry as Lena. "Daddy and the divorce, I am going to live with you, okay?" Molly had said. "Of course, baby." I answered by hugging her. I returned to the present and explained. I responded without thinking. It just took a second to know who it was. The phone rang again. Eldon kept calling and eventually tried the girls. Lena finally had enough. "What?" she shouted into the receiver. Eldon chastised her about her tone. "Mom, stop it. I don't want to talk to a cow that lies and cheats. We're in grief and you don't need to interfere." Eldon yelled curses. I never assumed she knew. She assumed Lena was sad about our marriage rather than Max's death. And Stella's condition. Lena interrupted her. "Mom, I will not put up with your ranting. Dad told us everything. I am not interested in living with you. You have lost the respect of both of your daughters." She stopped and then added. "Molly told us everything she knew. Pack your bags. None of us want you around." Another pause. "No, I will not tell you where we are." "Call Derek." "You cannot. Because he is with his wife. Who doesn't realize he's a cheating fool?" "Sorry, Mom." She hung up. Lena stared at us and replied. "Wrong number?" Despite everything, everyone laughed, including the nurses. Hazel went home for the night and promised to return early. Molly and I were about to go for a couple of hours. Lena and Finn would stay till midnight and then switch with us. As we were packing, a trauma nurse approached us. "She's awake," she exclaimed eagerly. We all grinned uneasily and inquired about Stella's condition. "She's currently with a doctor. She is out of it. But you may see her for a little moment." We took turns visiting Stella, who was dressed in medical gear and bandages. And her left forearm was wrapped in a high flower, as I called her. "You caused us quite a scare, but I am delighted you are on the mend." She was unable to speak owing to a breathing tube and was on powerful medication. Her eyes contained a query that I did not want to answer. I shook my head and she understood. A single tear ran down her cheek. I couldn't touch her, so I sat silently and told her how proud I was. And how we were going to get through this together. When I departed, a nurse gave me a tissue. I'd been crying without recognizing it. I thanked her before walking back down the hall. Molly and I returned home fatigued after hugging Lena and Finn for half an hour. We slept for around 3 hours before returning to the hospital to give Lena and Finn some rest. We felt comforted after seeing Stella awake. As we drove, we expressed our relief that Stella was okay. But scowled when we noticed a weird BMW X5 in our driveway. Damn, we mumbled together. When I saw the front lights on, I made a U-turn and parked near the curb. We noticed the curtain shift, but nobody opened the door. Should we go inside or leave? Molly asked. We should go inside. Sorry, honey, but I need to take a coffee break. You'll walk to your room and try to avoid what will be a difficult conversation. Are you certain I can stay with you, Dad? Molly asked, demonstrating her courage to address her mother despite her dislike for confrontation. I took out my phone and pushed record. Molly did the same. We exited the car and proceeded to the door. It was unlocked. And when we entered, Derek Fell confronted us. The small, betrayed man returned to apologize. He hissed, "You better play ball before I ruin your life." Molly walked in, making Derek flinch. Isabel hesitated. I am too exhausted for this. I'm going to bed. I'll make sure we get back by 11:30, Molly said, moving by Derek and Isabel while mumbling idiot and strumpet. When her door closed, they turned on me. Isabel warned you not to say anything, you fool. Derek lunged at me. I held up my phone. I am recording this chat and will continue until you depart, I said. Isabel became pallid. Derek paled but shrugged. Whatever betrayed mankind, he smirked. Derek was taller and broader than me, yet the majority of his body was fat. He was balding, in his late 40s or early 50s. I couldn't see why Isabel wanted him to ignore Derek. I addressed Isabel. Isabel, I requested you not to be here when I get home. And you insulted me even more by bringing your lover, Ethan. She began. But Derek intervened, taking a step forward. Listen, you idiot, we told you not to say anything. Now I'm about to make your life terrible. Mr. Philip Worth, you're not welcome here. Mind your language. My daughter is in another room. So, he yelled. She will not tell anyone, nor will you. He took my phone, slammed it on the floor, stepped on it, and began yelling. You're merely a provincial printer whose wife is tired of him. Isabel joined in. Ethan, this is true. Derek is better than you. Now that you've told the girls it'll be difficult for you, we'll ruin you. Isabel, what are you? Derek hit me before I had finished. I tumbled and moved with the hit. But it still ached. You punched me in my house, I murmured, massaging the injury. So what? Isabel will support me in whatever I do. I could destroy you right now. And she told the cops you assaulted me. I am a lawyer. You may believe you are significant in the print world, but I create the greens that make the world go round. He laughed. I take what I want from whomever I want, and no one can stop me. I gazed at Isabel from the ground. Isabel, is this true? You are going to support this idiot, I responded, rising to my feet. Derek took a protective position, but relaxed when he noticed me focusing on Isabel. She appeared tense but defiant. I apologize, Ethan, but I will support Derek even if he destroys you. You're simply not a man like him, I exhaled. So you both need to leave or I'll unleash hell on you. That will make everyone mock you. Derek, emboldened, lunged at me again. I swiftly avoided tripping him and forcing him to crash into the coffee table. He stood up, ready to strike again, but I sidestepped him and he dropped in a fog. I grasped his ear and said, staring at Isabel with a burning loathing. Listen, you fool. You took my wife, invaded my home, and are now lying on the floor. You are about to be arrested. I am going to wreck your life. I let go and he slumped to the ground. What have you done? Isabel yelled as she rushed to Derek. Ethan. What have you done to Derek? I shrugged. Never mind, Isabel. You both assaulted me without first asking how Molly and I were doing. You simply followed his plan. She scowled at me while leaning over Derek. After a moment, I resumed. Our daughter and her boyfriend came to support me since they sensed something was wrong. Stella and Max were on their way here. 4. Breakfast when they were hit by an out-of-control vehicle. Max has died and Stella is in critical condition. If you had bothered to follow the news or ask, you would have learned that one. But he died as a result of your actions, and another may not survive. I let it sink in. Isabel had the guts to growl at me. It is not my fault. Ethan, we told you not to say anything. It is your fault, not mine, that they have died. No, Mom, it is your fault, Molly said while standing in the doorway. The police and ambulance are on the way. She gazed at Isabel. I'm not sure who you are, but you are not my mother. If you hadn't cheated, this would never have occurred. She looked at her hands. And it was partially my fault. Perhaps if I had told Daddy, he would have stopped it. Molly, I began to say, no, Daddy. I should have said something. But the blame is on her, she stated, pointing to Isabel. She went back to her room as we heard sirens arriving. 2 police cars arrived and mayhem followed. Isabel attempted to say that I had attacked Derek, but when asked if he was her husband, she stumbled, confessing that he wasn't and that I punched him. I shared my side of the tale. An ambulance arrived and Derek, who was quite sick, was brought out on a stretcher. The police were about to arrest me because I had attacked someone. Isabel insisted it was my responsibility. Then Molly returned to the room and said, I'm sorry, officer, but I have a recording. That confirms everything my father said. It contains threats from this man and my mother that she would lie to protect him. She gave over a USB drive to the officer. What if Derek shattered your phone? I asked Isabel, not realizing the officers were still listening. Mom? Dad suspected something would happen, so I taped everything from my room. She stared at the officer. I don't feel safe with my mother. Could you kindly stop making me stay with her? She stated that she will support this man, regardless of what he did to Dad. I heard him punch Dad and I'm terrified. Molly hugged me, and based on her statement and proof, my wife was detained and sent to the station for the night. Isabel looked at me but didn't say anything as she was led away. We didn't have time to sleep, so we showered, changed, and had coffee before returning to the hospital. Lena and Finn leaned against one another in Stella's room. Lena gasped when she saw my face. Daddy, what happened? She inquired, noting the bruising from where I was injured. We discussed Isabel and Derek's visit and I mentioned punching Derek Stella. When he woke up, he stared at me with sadness. Stella, I stammered. I apologize, Petal. If I had known you were awake, I would have been more careful. I watched her right hand move slightly and softly held it. Are you all right, Stella? Can I get you something? Do you need a nurse? I asked. She blinked twice, then 3 times, carefully grasping my arm. I remained by her side all night. The following few weeks sped by. Isabel's folks bailed her out the next day, calling me names until Lena corrected them. Isabel received divorce papers at work and was placed on unpaid leave. She moved into her parents' extra room. She returned to pack her belongings while Lena and Finn observed. Lena made it obvious that her mother would not be welcome again, blaming her for the accident. It took a week to remove Stella's breathing tube. Her first harsh words were to me. Ethan, are you okay? I was shocked. Stella, how do you ask that? She smiled sadly. I am all right, honey. I knew about Max before you informed me. We confessed our love, but he knew he would not make it. She cried after I awoke and I saw your eyes confirm that he was gone. I sat next to her, clutching her right hand, which was still intact. Unlike her missing left. She whispered, I had a dream last night. Max approached me, looking beautiful and uninjured. He assured me that he was okay and that it was his time. The accident was not anyone's fault, not even Isabel's. Her smile slipped somewhat. I understand. Just like Max, there is no one to blame. He said he loved me. But now it is my responsibility to take care of you, Ethan. He loved you like a brother and was saddened by what happened to you. I said, Stella, you are the one who requires care. Haven't you realized you're missing one arm? She laughed and lifted her stump. I'm safe now, aren't I? I snorted. I guess it's my responsibility now to assist you when you need it. She laughed. I am serious, Cam. I mourn Max, yet I feel at peace. He made me pledge to take care of you. I smiled. Okay, you won. You can care for me. Stella appeared smug. But only after you've left here. Until then, I need to look after you. The following few months passed slowly. If I wasn't at work, I was either at the hospital with Stella or packing at home. We decided to sell the house and relocate to a smaller home in North Sydney, close to public transportation and a medical centre. It included 3 bedrooms, an office, and a distant view of Sydney Harbour from the master bedroom. The divorce from Isabel was fully underway. The females would have nothing to do with her. Molly, who had previously been flexible, was now as tough as nails. Lena practically moved in with Finn Isabel, living in her parents' spare room, and attempted to reconcile. However, after hearing the tape from Molly's phone, her parents stopped attempting to reconcile things. Derek's life also fell apart. He lost his testicle, was sacked, and faced my lawsuit. His wife, Lydia, who handled the majority of their funds, discovered his infidelity and cut him off. Derek was now staying in a cheap hotel, unable to find work. Stella improved on a daily basis. A month after the accident, she left the hospital with a nurse to say her goodbyes to Max. Despite her injuries, she smiled, joked, and consoled others. Her legs were in casts, her head and left forearm were wrapped, and a scar ran across her face. Doctors advised that it may be fixed with plastic surgery later at the funeral. I pushed Stella's wheelchair. Her caregiver remained near. But give me a sibling. A month later, I was in Stella's hospital room doing paperwork when I noticed her gaze on me. What's the matter, Petal? Do you need anything? I inquired, turning to face her. Tears ran down her face. Ethan, She attempted to say. I instantly hurried to her side and wrapped my arms around her. She wailed in my arms. The psychiatrist told her that this could happen as soon as she awoke. She was worried about others, not herself. She rose. Everything is going to be okay. I am here for you. You will never be alone, I remarked, soothing her. She cried harder, nodding and hanging onto me with her good arm. I understand, Ethan. I just miss him so much, she pleaded with me. I miss him too, Stella. Max was my best friend. I'm not sure what I would have done without you and Max. When Isabel did what she did, I told her, and she held me closer. Will things become better? She asked. Vulnerable? I do not know. I responded quietly. I hope so. Max is gone, but you're here and we have our children. That must count for something. She was silent for a moment before relaxing. Thank you, Ethan. I'm not sure I could have done it without you. You're becoming smarter with age. She giggled uncomfortably. I stroked her hair and kissed her forehead. You are welcome, Stella. Without Max and Isabel, I am in need of a best buddy. Are you interested in this job? I asked while hugging her. Stella did something unexpected. She kissed me. I kissed her back, experiencing a spark of romantic love, then pulled away. Stella, I apologize. You're my best friend and I love you, but we are still mourning Maximum. She groaned and snuggled closer. I understand, Cam, but I still have feelings from high school. That night I slept restlessly and had a vivid dream. In my dream, I was in a vast pub with people who were out of focus. I greeted them, but everything seemed blurred. As I arrived, I noticed someone familiar sitting alone. He stood up. Max? I exclaimed, rushing to hug him. He laughed. I'm glad to see you can. You can hug me. We hugged, and he looked like he had before the accident. We sat down with drinks, a cracker and cola for me. A Guinness for him. Good stuff, he said. So how are you? Can I deflate my dream? Do you feel real? Not good, buddy. Divorcing Isabel is difficult. The girls are upset and supporting Stella is difficult. I feel like I'm drowning. Max nodded. How about you and Stella? He asked, lifting his brow. I thought for a moment. How about us, Cam? We've been buddies forever. I know you adore each other. I snorted. Of course, Max. She's my closest friend now. I want her to get better. He exhaled. But what about the kiss? You are unable to say. It meant nothing. I looked at him. I understand. It was more than that, Max. I am in love with her. Always have. He smiled. I understand it, buddy. Stella married you and Isabel married me. However, I am no longer alive. You are not allowed to cheat on me. Stella needs someone to love and protect her. And you adore her. He stared at me, and it felt as if the real Max was saying something significant. Stella also loves you, Ethan. She is devastated by my death, yet she is yearning for you to stay with her. She loves you just as much as she did me. Perhaps even more. You've known her for longer. I wasn't sure what to say, you know. Max leaned closer, as if revealing a secret. If Stella and I hadn't met while you were apart, she'd track you down and marry you. What? I said, almost choked on my drink. How do you know this? She told me. He smiled. How could she tell you? You are simply a dream, a fabrication of my imagination. Stella has never mentioned it to me. Max laughed. Cam, look about. This is not simply a dream, and I'm not a figment of your imagination. Crap, I responded. It is true. I will prove it to you. How? I asked with skepticism. 3 ways, he said amusingly. First, he raised a finger. Inquire as to what my final words to Stella were. I know you said you loved each other in the car. Max shakes his head. That is somewhat true, but my final words were love. Ethan, all your days. I started replying, but Max raised 2 fingers. Second, Eldon will arrive at the hospital tomorrow. It will not be pretty. Max, this is not the way. Third, he interrupted by raising 3 fingers. My mother will bring you in. Stella, the Asian shop near North Harbor serves delicious chicken salad. Sandwiches. She will be sporting yellow sandals. I looked at him. Max, how do you know this is a dream and you're dead? I asked. He touched his nose. It's a wonder I got to meet you and Stella at all. But I had been asked to. And I'm delighted to spend more time with you. I didn't believe him, but I was delighted to see him. So what am I expected to do? Marry her? Max laughed. It's up to you. But if you marry Stella, you will have my blessing. He raised his glass lover with ferocity. Ethan, and I'll be proud no matter what you decide. Max and I spent the next hour playing darts, drinking, and singing bar tunes. Other customers joined us, although I'm not sure who they were. My final memory was of Max hugging me and thanking me for being his friend. As we said our goodbyes, I awoke with tears streaming down my cheeks. I was sad, yet glad to have said goodbye. By the time I shaved and dressed, I'd practically forgotten about my dream. Before leaving for the hospital, I stopped by the office to check in with my bosses and complete some paperwork. I arrived around lunchtime, and Stella welcomed me into the room with a smile. The doctor said she had a long way to go but could return home in a few weeks. She had been moaning about her hospital bed, so I was pleased for her. We were talking about her sleeping in her own bed when Camille, Max's mother, strolled in. I didn't know Camille as well as Stella's mother, Hazel, but we were just friends. She smiled as she entered the room and Stella. Camille spoke cheerfully. You look so much better now. Ethan also appears to be really attractive. You're doing an excellent job taking care of Stella. Max would be proud. She continued, leaning in to kiss Stella. I stopped dead in my tracks when I noticed her yellow footwear. Stella witnessed my reaction. Cam, what is wrong? Both Stella and Camille saw my stare. Is there something wrong with my shoes? Camille frowned as she added, I just bought them yesterday. I responded, no, sorry Camille. Your sneakers have reminded me of a dream I had, I said, attempting to dismiss it. Stella gave me a look that said we would talk about it later. Before I forget, I picked up your lunches at a fantastic Asian sandwich place in North Harbor. They serve the greatest chicken sandwiches. Camille spoke happily as she described chicken sandwiches. I murmured the phrases beside her. Cam, are you all right? Stella inquired, apprehensive. I glanced at both of them, trying to tell myself it was all a coincidence. We ate the sandwiches and Camille was correct. They were wonderful. After lunch, we talked about the weather and our preparations to get Stella home. Isabel strolled in just as I was starting to relax. Isabel, clad in jeans and a top with her hair in a bun, was carrying flowers and a wrapped gift. Stella, it's great to see you. She looked at me and said, you look great. Her demeanor shifted. Ethan, what are you doing here? It is your fault. Stella is here and Max has died. Once I divorce you, I will ensure that Stella never has to see you again. I stood up. Get out, Stella said softly, moving away from everyone. Stella. I will get Ethan out, Isabel stated. No, he is staying. So you're leaving? Stella said this while crying. I approached Isabel. Do you need to leave now? Isabel hurled the present to the floor and the flowers against the wall. I stepped between her and Stella. What did you tell her, Ethan? She understands that you are to blame for Max's death. I will take care of Stella. She needs me. No, she does not. Stella lost her husband. I've lost my best friend. We have been here every day. Where have you been? I began to rant. Ethan. Stella's voice broke through. My fury went away as I turned to face her. I apologize, I murmured. It's okay, Stella said. She gazed at Isabel. You should depart. Your actions indicate that you are not my friend. Do not exploit Max's death to blame Ethan. I'm sorry to have ever addressed you as a friend. You're not welcome here. Should I contact security? Stella questioned Isabel. Isabel attempted to object, but Stella raised her stump. Leave, Isabel. You can't remain with me anymore. We are no longer pals, Isabel, Stella pleaded. This is not fair. Nobody is fair. Isabel. Stella intervened, her rage growing. What is unfair is that my husband has died and I am permanently disabled because you choose to sleep with your husband, one of my best friends. The room fell silent, except for the sounds from the corridor. Isabel switched her attention between Stella and myself, displaying a variety of emotions. Before resting on rage. Well, screw you, Stella. I see how it happens, you hypocritical beaver, she snarled. You can shove whatever assistance I was going to provide you. I grabbed Isabel's arm and dragged her out of the room as we walked down the hallway. She hissed and swore I knew. The guards would arrive soon. I turned to face her. I'm not sure what happened to you, but it is over now. You have ruined every relationship around you, from your daughters to your friends to me. The doors opened and 2 security guards walked out. Are you okay, sir? Someone asked. I waved him off. Fine. Peter. Isabel was just leaving. The guard was not fooled, but he let it go. Isabel looked at me, then at the guards, and shrugged. Sure. I will see you later, Ethan, she said. I hope not. I responded. The guards led me back to Stella's room, where Camille and Stella were whispering. After making sure Stella was okay, the guards left and the cleaners cleaned up the mess. Camille hugged me tight. Thank you, Ethan. Look after her, Camille whispered before leaving. She needs you. Are you okay? I asked Stella, sitting on her bed and squeezing her hand. Isn't this what I should be asking you? She responded, snorting. I shrugged. It's been a strange day, but after dealing with Isabel, I felt calmer. It began with that dream last night. Stella lifted her head. What about the dream? I nodded. Yeah, I could not sleep. So I tossed and turned. Then I dreamed about Max in a pub. Stella nodded. Everyone was out of focus in this large tavern except for Max. Yes, exactly. Max explained what will happen today. Camille's shoes and Isabel's sandwiches appear. He said everything will happen. Stella stared at me, her eyes filled with faith. Was there another one? She asked. I nodded. Max's final words to me were love. Ethan, all your days? Stella replied, tears flowing down her cheeks. How did you know? I whispered. Max also met me in the pub. He informed me that I have to let you go while still loving you. He stated you wouldn't be able to ask the question when the time came, so I had to tell. You are final words. We collapsed into each other's arms, wailing and expressing our anguish. As nightfall fell, we continued to hold each other. Both of us are fatigued. Finally, as we fell asleep, I kissed the top of her head and whispered, Hedel, I love you. I also love you. I love you too. 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 Lena's homecoming was ecstatic. The physicians advised her to proceed cautiously while resuming a fulfilling relationship. The kids had moved much of Stella's stuff into the new house, including the master bedroom, which I didn't mind. Lena and Finn left for Stella's old place after dinner on her first night home, while Molly went to a friend's house, leaving Stella and me alone. The prenuptial agreement enabled my divorce from Isabel to be formalized a few weeks later. She got very little and didn't bother with my business. I wrote her a check for $40,000 more than she needed, believing it would help her start a new life elsewhere, perhaps in Wollongong, so we wouldn't have to see her again. Derek got into difficulties after failing to find work. He started distributing pills and was apprehended by an undercover officer. He is presently serving 2 years in prison. 6 months later, Stella and I married. She looked stunning in her wedding gown, yet self-conscious about her appearance. With our help, her bouts of depression were brief. Stella changed jobs, receiving a degree in psychology and working with patients who had lost limbs. 2 years later, she was honored on Australia Day for her efforts to assist the crippled. In her speech, she thanked her family, particularly myself, for her success, as I had assisted her during her rehabilitation. We conducted several media interviews to discuss the issues that people with physical limitations confront. Our love grew with each passing day. Despite our arguments, we always forgive each other and never went to bed furious. We hadn't seen Isabel for almost 3 years until Lena and Finn's wedding. Lena and Finn graduated with honors, got nice jobs, and wanted to have a family. Though Lena did not want to invite her mother, I persuaded her that Isabel deserved to attend her daughter's wedding. Lena consented, but sat Isabel with the visitors rather than the family. Isabel ended up with her elderly parents, who preserved the peace by sitting a few tables apart. At the wedding, I found myself at the bar with a cracker and cola. It wasn't on the menu, but because I was paying, I assumed I could have whatever I wanted. Isabel approached me at the bar and ordered a glass of white wine. She turned to face me. "I have never asked for forgiveness, have I?" she said. "Is this more of a statement than a question?" "No," I said, staring at the crowd. Stella, Molly, and Lena were laughing at the opposite end of the room. I smiled. I didn't expect you to, I added. Isabel sighed. You're correct. I was a total disaster, I said, taking a sip from my drink. Stella frowned when she spotted me with Isabel, but nodded when I shook my head, signaling that it was not a huge concern. I saw you at the Australia Day Awards and have been following your progress since. Isabel said sadly. I'm watching my wife and our daughters. They all despise me, don't they? She inquired, glancing at her wine glass. Hate is a strong word, I thought, then grinned. No, that's the correct word. However, the fire eventually spread. Perhaps in a dozen years the females will call you. I felt her shoulders droop. She turned to face me. How about you, Ethan? Do you despise me? She asked. Hate, abhor, and despise. Take your pick, I replied, hearing the band start up. I grinned as I thought about dancing with my daughter. But you convinced Lena to invite you tonight? Why? She asked. I gazed at her for the first time in the entire evening. She appeared hollow, with hunted eyes and graying hair. This woman whom I once loved was broken. No mother, no matter how shamed, should miss her daughter's wedding. I did not ask you to help you feel better, but I insisted that our daughter marry with a clear mind, and I'll be glad if I never see you again. I stepped out to join my family during the wedding dance. I heard her sobbing, but had no sympathy. The remainder of the evening was spent dancing, eating, and laughing. I never saw Isabel again. Years later, we found out from her parents that Isabel had died. Molly's engagement celebration occurred shortly after she had become engaged to a doctor. We discovered Isabel had an inflammatory ovarian cyst and died in a hospital with only her parents by her side. She did not want anyone to tell us. It was incredibly sad. Stella and I kept each other close. We spoiled our grandchildren jointly. We explored the world, experienced many things, and had a great time with our family. Our affection never faded. Stella reminded me of the girl I fell in love with at the age of 18, the woman I married at 40, and a cheeky smile from a grandma approaching 82. I knew I was lucky. I knew in my heart that I would be cherished until my death. What are your opinions about this story? Please let me know in the comments below. Now for the following story. Please enjoy. Several years into my 40s, I found myself informing my wife Ava and her soon-to-be partner Richie. Go to a hotel. Fortune was on my side as I was able to follow them without being spotted. Ava and Richie, both carrying a little bank, tried to appear smart. Despite considerable tension, remained unaware of my presence. I remembered the talk I had with the secretary earlier, which had led me to this point. While Ava was staring at her reflection in the enormous mirror at the front desk, I observed another pair. They married in stark contrast. The man carried a large luggage and numerous bags, whilst the other only had a tiny travel bag. He was dressed for practical travel, indicating a long vacation ahead. Seizing the opportunity, I surreptitiously took a couple photos of Ava and Richie via the mirror. As Richie checked in, the hotel administrator noticed me. I gave a small nod, and she smiled back, as if she was enjoying the subtle interest. I caught faint words, and seen Ava withdraw herself from Richie before turning away. The receptionist then addressed Ava, forcing her to stop before handing her an envelope. An envelope that I had already scheduled to be delivered. After a while, the pair in front of me exchanged glances as if they shared a special bond. And the male moaned loudly. Then something unusual occurred. My wife bolted out of the room, taking her small luggage with her. The receptionist gave Richie another envelope, which I passed to her. With these words, I turned and approached the door. Here is the account of how we arrived and what occurred next. It all began with a Christmas party hosted by my wife, Ava. There she was, with her pal Elise and her husband, Leon. I wasn't really drawn to Leon, but I was content with him. We talked, but we shared no mutual interests. He enjoyed golf and cricket, while I favored vintage cars, DIY, and gardening. Elise and Ava have been friends since school and have even worked in the same bank, albeit on opposite sides. Elise worked in a commercial bank, while Ava worked in a government bank. I followed Ava for drinks. I overheard her mention that I wouldn't mind having his slippers next to my bed. Looking across the room, I spotted Nathan, who had recently joined the bank. Initially, all conversations concentrated around him. An attractive Greek guard who stood around 6 feet tall, had wavy blonde hair and exuded confidence. He could communicate with the bank's executives, but he was on the same level as Ava and Elise. An pretty young blonde woman stood next to him, and he had his arm around her waist. I had already spoken with Richie, and he came across as pompous as Leon. We had some conversation, but no shared interests. "What exactly is wrong with my slippers beside your bed?" I asked, and I doubt his blonde would want to see his slippers near your bed. "Who is she anyway?" Elise exploded. "This is his wife, Ava. They've been married 5 years, and have a kid named Eli. He is 2 years old. I guess she's experiencing some issues." She expressed some interest, but did not delve further into the facts. I looked at Ava and saw concern in her eyes. My tone turned serious. "If you want someone else's slippers beside your bed, first divorce me." With these words, I proceeded to the restroom. I didn't genuinely need the toilet, but I wanted to express my anger. When I returned, Ava apologized. It was simply a saying, "Honey, I would never cheat on you if I discovered that his or anyone else's slippers were anywhere near the bed on which you were lying." "I'll file for divorce right now," I said forcefully. Elise stared at me. "Robert, do not overdo it." Ava lowered her eyes. "I'd never do this to you, sweetie. I love you." She took a sip of her drink and bit her lip, expressing regret. Elise simply giggled. "I am sure Robert will forgive you for this blunder," I said, staring at Elise. She saw my look and I snorted. In return, Leon almost said the same thing to Elise, but her reaction was very different. She smiled at Leon and responded, "You would not divorce me, darling. You love me too much to forgive me for a single error, right?" I have never heard Leon swear like that before. "Do not try it, honey," he said, "you might not like it." Elise had a gleam in her eye and playfully stroked Leon's hand, saying, "No, I won't." "But you're still trying to force me. You love me too much." Although I didn't know Leon well, his actions gave me optimism that she wouldn't make a mistake. It was at this point that I discovered why I disliked Elise. She took everyone, even her husband, who clearly adored her, for granted. This exchange made me wary. Ava occasionally followed Elise, which bothered me. I informed Ava that I did not approve of her following Elise's doubtful advice. I told her that she had her own opinions, but Elise appeared to be able to persuade her. I warned her to be herself. After that, things seemed to calm down a little, although I spotted Elise and Ava casting intermittent glances toward Richie. Elise had a look of longing on her face. She even invited Richie to dance while Leon went to the restroom. It appears that Richie asked Elise himself, and the process was quite slow. Since it was Ava's office party, I agreed to go. She drove the automobile. It was my company's obligation. We discussed such stuff. When we dropped Elise and Leon off at their place and went home, the rest of the ride was quiet and cold, I said in a quiet voice. I believe Elise's attempt to start an affair with Richie would be insulting to both her marriage and Richie's wife. If you assist her, I will have major concerns about our marriage and future, since it will demonstrate the same disdain. She didn't respond. Things improved throughout the weekend, and the environment grew less frigid. Elise sent Ava multiple text messages with a unique tone. On Saturday night, we went to bed with the same giggling frog. I found an old pair of slippers at the bottom of my wardrobe and put them on her side of the bed. She smiled as she understood the humor. Then we made love. Captain, I brought everything back to normal, including how she dressed and what time she arrived. I tried to do things that I believed she would enjoy to demonstrate my affection for her and to inform her of what she stood to lose if she opted to cheat or assist a cheater. There was no more talk about Richie. It wasn't Elise's adultery that disturbed me as much as the fact that I helped her do it. I occasionally reminded her of the potential implications if I discovered she was assisting Elise in cheating on Leon. I was pointing out how celebrities seem to make and shatter marriages by failing to keep their commitments. I told her stories I'd heard and made up some scenarios in which husbands and wives caught their partners cheating. And I made it obvious that if she did anything like that again, I would leave and disappear from her life. I will just leave. I took a walk with the guys from work. It wasn't a place we frequented, but one of the guys liked the barmaid. I noticed Elise and Richie, who appeared to be very relaxed and comfortable. When I returned home, I told Ava about it. She instantly realized they were working together. I snapped a picture and showed it to her. I questioned her why she was at the pub at 10 p.m. She immediately replied that they were only pals. As if she had pre-prepared replies. Is Leon aware of your friendship, or is he off to play golf again? I knew he frequently disappeared on weekends for this activity. She turned and went upstairs to bed. I finished my beer and followed her to my side of the bed. I choose to clarify. Did you know Elise scheduled an appointment? She responded quietly. She mentioned that she might meet him this weekend. Does Leon know? I do not know. Her voice remained expressionless. She laid over, glanced at me, and stated, I will not interfere. I recognized that expression. I trusted her. I snuggled up to her in bed, hugging and kissing her before pulling her onto my shoulder. This was one of her favorite spots. Nothing further needed to be stated. A week later, after a long talk with Ava's mother, she asked if I wanted to accompany her to see her parents in a few weeks. They had some little tasks that needed to be completed. I liked Myra and Gideon. They were friendly and pleasant individuals, so I eagerly accepted. On Friday, we traveled to Gloucester. It was too late to do anything, so Ava and her mother merely chatted about Ava's old friends, family news, and local gossip. Gideon and I were just conversing and sipping a beer. We spent a wonderful day with them. I assisted with certain chores that I could perform for them. In reality, they were not that old. Gideon was just 65, but arthritis in his hand stopped him from performing some of the tasks. I was delighted to help him. In the evening, we went out to dine before returning home to continue our talk. As we finished our dinner, Ava's phone began playing the sound of a chuckling frog. She did not even look at the television. She just switched on the vibration. Messages can be checked later. The food was delicious, and the company was enjoyable. On my drive home, I could still hear her phone vibrating. We returned home and drank more. Gideon got some crafty old fowl, so I drank a few bottles of this beverage. Some of us were already a touch tipsy when we arrived upstairs, but overall, it was a fantastic evening. I opted to ignore Elise's communications despite my curiosity. We went to bed, and Ava felt a bit in love. It was strange doing this with her parents in the next room, but she simply savored the moment. Around 1 p.m., the wily old hen, as I playfully referred to my bladder, chose to remind me of its existence, so I went to the toilet. Ava's phone was on the dressing table, and I could hear it vibrating and line up. Elise had left a message at this time in the morning, and I thought, what's on her mind right now? I looked at the message previews. My God, this is incredible. You should give it a try. Even if just once I heard the preview end. I knew better than to intervene, so I carried the phone with me to the restroom. When I opened Elise's message folder, we already knew each other's passwords. I just saw previews. None of them were open. I couldn't afford to open them without Ava noticing. But based on what I observed, it was evident that she had spent the entire night with Richie, and what that meant. I wondered whether this weekend had been planned as a spa weekend, but Leon said nothing about it. I could not reach him to confirm this. I've not opened a single mail. I was just doing my business in the toilet, trying not to draw attention. On Sunday, I got up early to complete some duties for Gideon. When they all arrived at 9 o'clock, I was prepared. When Ava slipped her phone onto the charger, it lit up and peered closely, but there were no messages from Elise. She did not seem to notice my keys. I believe Elise and Leon were very active yesterday night. Is there anything interesting about these messages? I inquired till I had mentioned it. She seems to have forgotten about them. She looked at her phone before swiftly disappearing into another room. She appeared to be speaking with Dee, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. She returned with a crimson face. Something occurred. We all packed everything, got in the car, and started our journey home. As we approached the M5, I commented to Ava. Looks like Elise has been busy this weekend. I did not mention Leon's name, only Elise. Yes, I believe they had a fantastic weekend. We were already approaching the house and the automobile was silent. Ava seems busy with her own thoughts. When we exited the expressway and came to a stoplight, I decided to clarify the matter. I choose not to mince words. I turned to her and said, if I find out Elise spent the weekend with Richie and you helped her arrange a visit to your parents, I will not be able to forgive her. And I will seriously consider our marriage. I warned you about it. The lights changed and the driver behind me honked. The remaining 10 kilometers home were spent in silence. When I looked at her, she was looking at her hands in her lap. It was Bartholomew's fault. We came home and I decided it was time for a beer. Perhaps a little earlier than normal. Ava walked upstairs to unpack and placed the filthy clothing into the laundry basket. When she came down, it appeared that she was crying. Her eyes were slightly reddish. She recommended ordering Chinese food to save time on cooking. I consented, having already had beer, and resolved not to dispute. She returned with food, and I noticed she had bought me a few more bottles of crafty old hen at the supermarket. I wondered if she spoke with Elise while she was out of the house. I've already prepared the plates and other necessary items for dinner. We sat down to eat and she was extremely depressed. On the way, she told me, love. I didn't help Elise. I told her that we were leaving this weekend. I did not plan it so she could go away and spend time with Richie. But I assume she took advantage of the fact that you aren't talking to Leon. I apologize, honey. I didn't see it coming. I believe she would have done it. I've received enough text messages and phone calls to know she did. I do not know what to do. Should I tell Leon? Is it best not to meddle so as not to jeopardize their marriage? All you need to do is think about it and make your own conclusion. One that helps you fall asleep at night. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, I made the right decision. And most essential, look Leon in the eyes when we meet again. We saw a portion of the program on television. I drank a few more bottles of beer before we went to bed. There was nothing erotic, just hugs. Just before going to bed, she simply whispered, I'm so sorry, darling. She arrived home late from work on Monday. And even though she called to tell me I was concerned. Over dinner, she stated that she had a lengthy conversation with Elise and discovered some unpleasant details, but that she did not want to share them with me. It was good. She told Elise that this time she would not tell. However, if she discovered something new, she would react differently the next time. And if Leon asked her directly, she wouldn't object. She cautioned Elise that she would not help her cheat on her husband, as doing so would damage her marriage and cause Leon to leave her. She did, however, giggle at the Christmas party when someone mentioned slippers. Leon responded with silence and a solemn attitude. Elise informed her that this was only intended for one time. It was good, but she wouldn't take that chance again. And if Richard's wife finds out, she will divorce him. So he did not wish to repeat. Richard's father-in-law did not appear to trust him, and they eventually entered into a prenuptial agreement. Everything in the house started to improve. One day over lunch, I went to the local newsstand and bought a vehicle magazine. Before going to the cafe to read quietly away from the workplace commotion, Caspian, one of our office's young guys, came out with a magazine. It appears that he encountered a saleswoman. She was slightly older than him and looked attractive. Caspian was a kind person, although he always appeared a little naive to me. They got their drinks and sat in the booth behind me. I heard her apologize for the weekend mix-up, but her husband became suspicious, forcing her to cancel Saturday night. She stated that she wouldn't be working late for a while. She mentioned how vital it was for her to monitor her behavior and appearance in order to prevent her husband's suspicions. She explained that her husband spotted her clothes and she feels bad, so she pays more attention to him to distract him. She stated that her connection with her husband was not very good. Caspian was better. He met her needs more effectively than her spouse ever could. I encountered Caspian by chance at the printer while he was alone. I decided to take advantage of the opportunity and share my findings with him. I told him what I had heard, but I advised him to be careful. I recognized it was his personal matter. He confided in me that she had told him about her husband's violence and that she couldn't leave him because of the children. We talked about the challenges they faced and how they kept their encounters from their husbands. He unloaded as if he had expelled all of the stress he had previously carried within himself, even in front of his colleagues at work. I warned him that while the company doesn't care about his personal life as long as it doesn't interfere with his profession, if a husband finds out about his wife, it might lead to significant consequences. This served as a form of advice for me during this time. My concern started when I discovered Ava had changed the ringer on her cell phone. Previously, there was the sound of a frog, but Diane appeared on the screen as an alarm to me. After chatting with Caspian, I was advised about what to watch out for. I examined her demeanor, clothing, and makeup. Nothing has changed. She remained dressed the same as before. She was never late for work unexpectedly, regardless of the weather. Even when she was out with colleagues after work, she would always leave early and ask me to bring her up. I used to volunteer to do it myself, but she has recently insisted that I pick her up. This lasted approximately 5 weeks. Something didn't seem right to me. However, in bed, everything was normal, and I paid no attention to it. I tried to check her phone, but she had changed the password. I asked her about it. She said that someone at work witnessed her input her password. So she chose to change it, but didn't notify me. She instantly told me the new password to avoid suspicion. I had to wait till she had left the phone charging overnight before checking it. I found nothing suspicious. At a summer cookout in a bank, my neck began to move, and the hairs at the back of my neck stood on end. Leon was off golfing over the weekend, so Elise joined us, knowing we were going to hire a taxi. I figured I could afford to drink a bit more than normal, which resulted in my lengthy potty sessions. I attempted to appear a little inebriated so they wouldn't pay attention, which worked. When I went to the bar for drinks and returned much sooner than intended, I saw Ava and Elise in a quiet spot of the garden. Why did they choose this specific corner? I sneaked up behind them and overheard Elise speaking. We have everything under control, so no one will notice anything amiss. We have considered every factor, including the location, time, and even your appearance. Most significantly, I have reserved a hotel room in your name for the symposium. Do not worry if Robert decides to check. Elise only said this once. I still have doubts. Why? What if I get caught? Ava was terrified you wouldn't be caught. There is nothing wrong with that. Please be friendlier to Robert. It's simple with men, Elise reassured her. Ava stated, I don't like the idea of risk yet. Sure, he'll return shortly. We will discuss everything at work. I will notify you as soon as I receive information about the hotel. Avoid leaving electronic traces, Elise reassured her, but no names were mentioned. After their talk, I realized this was a date with Richie. All I needed to do was wait. Elise was driven home by the taxi and then returned to see us. I decided to tell Ava what I had noticed. I noticed how you looked at Richie. If I see his slippers near our bed, I will leave. As I have stated, I will simply leave, I said, attempting to communicate the gravity of my remarks as I gazed at her, suddenly sober from my intoxication. She understood what I meant. There was no response. She simply glanced out the window. When she arrived home, she informed me of the symposium she was giving. I expressed my excitement for her when I inquired about the symposium's theme. She faltered somewhat, banking in 2013. It sounded absurd to try to act enthusiastic while praying that I was incorrect. Later, I investigated whether such a symposium was indeed planned and discovered that she was telling the truth. She made the decision to arrive at the hotel early to avoid morning traffic on the day of the symposium. But why was she so confused? The hotel room will most likely remain unoccupied while Ava sees Richie somewhere. Meeting him in the same hotel where a symposium with colleagues is taking place would be foolish. Neither she nor Elise would do it. We rarely spent time apart, so I suggested that I follow her and we spend the weekend at a hotel, as we had done once or twice previously. She was perplexed by this concept and stated that after the symposium she would be exhausted and would prefer to be at home with her husband in her bed. The Love Hotel had to be closed because she still needed to arrive at the Symposium by 8 a.m. if she went. So I began exploring for inexpensive motels near the symposium location. There were quite a few of them. I was still unsure if it was a date and thought Ava should make her own decision about whether or not to end her marriage, given all of the warnings. I loved her and wanted to give her one more chance, but then I wanted to see how she planned to regain our trust. I realized she was under Elise's influence and cautioned her again. Then, a week before the symposium, something else made me suspicious. To commemorate the new deal, the bank organized a company party at a local bar. I volunteered to pick them up when they were finished, as usual. It would be unusual if they turned down my offer. They tried, but not really hard. I insisted. I arrived early and stood silently in the corner. Music was playing and everyone was dancing. I saw Richie take Ava's hand and led her to the dance floor, but in the middle of the song, she shifted to the side and appeared to be delayed. I got out my phone and started taking pictures. I looked around, but no one was paying attention save Elise, who I could see, and then I noticed Richie put his hand on Ava's chest. I anticipated her to push him away, but that didn't happen. I took some more pictures. Then they kissed. It wasn't a passionate kiss, but rather a touch of lips. I also documented this with images. The music stopped and Richie and Ava returned to their seats as I approached. Ava was obviously not herself. Usually she was in control, but today, something seemed off. When she saw me, her face turned red. This did not make me pleased, but this was not yet a basis to discuss divorce. From now on, it appears that I will have to be more watchful and warn her about the potential consequences of cheating. While we were driving home, I inquired if Richie and Elise intended to attend the conference. Ava stated she didn't know. When we came to a halt at a red light, I turned to her and remarked, "I can't believe you wouldn't know if your colleague was attending the same symposium as you. I do not want you to lie to me." The light went green and I couldn't speak anymore. Simply look at her. As we drove away, she gazed down quietly. I continued, "When I think about cheaters, if they utilize this to get together and you cover for them, that's cheating in my book. I am warning you again. If you cheat on me, I will go. Simply leave, and you'll never see me again." Now I was certain that something was wrong, but how was this confirmed? I felt that the answer was at the conference, and I should behave like a detective, keeping an eye on her. Then there was a pause. I stopped eyeing her phone, but in passing I noticed the screen light up. Best Western Sally Hall. "Mrs. Jones, this is your confirmation. Our name isn't Jones." When she checked her phone later, the hotel where the symposium was held was the Best Western Coventry Hotel, which was not far away. The message was not present nor in the trash. I had them. Several plans were running through my thoughts. She will have one last chance in case she makes the wrong decision. I went to our lawyers and launched the case. I departed with the separation letter as a preliminary to the divorce. I got a copy of the divorce petition online, which astonished me, but given the option, I didn't think she'd go for it. But I had to mend it so she wouldn't feel inclined to do it again. What would I have done if she hadn't followed through? The trouble for me was that I loved her wholeheartedly, but there was a limit. If she permitted any portion of another person to enter her body, that was it. I will not stand for this. If she didn't, we'd be working on trust, which would be a difficult and potentially futile task. Wednesday night love was amazing, but I couldn't help wondering if it was guilty lovemaking. Ava promised me more. Over the weekend, I reserved a hotel room in Sully Hall, thinking nothing would happen. I took a day off work and arrived early. I had a lengthy talk with the administrator about infidelity in relationships. She informed me it was clear who was having the affair. Married couples did not arrive together. They were far more practical. Usually, the husband carries the luggage while the wife carries a tiny bag. Any of them will talk. Suppose they were having an affair. They both had tiny bags and the man was continually talking. He would frequently wrap his arm around her waist or hold hands, pretending to be a married couple. As long as the personnel didn't intervene, it was all good fun. So when I suggested something to Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the receptionist felt it was an excellent idea. I laughed a little, especially because they captured it on CCTV, but it cost £20. I saw Richie and Ava enter and followed them, forming a mature couple between us. They stepped in just as the receptionist had described the lovers. I managed to get a photograph and wondered how long this lover's stare would last. I heard him inform the secretary that Mr. and Mrs. Jones had been booked in. The administrator looked at me and I nodded. Of course, sir. She leaned over to the computer and performed her task. She requested him to fill out a vehicle registration form before handing him a key card. I suggested the following suggestion to the secretary. She seemed to find it entertaining. She smiled at my wife who was next to her like a lover. Then everything changed. Ava's body shook and she moved away from Richie. She shook her head, I believe. She mumbled, "No, I cannot." Richie gazed at her, puzzled. The administrator went on to say, "The hotel isn't interested in your names. However, I am confident that your genuine name is Mrs. Ava Harris." I noticed my wife stagger. She moved away from Richie. The administrator proceeded calmly, "I have an envelope for you. Have a good day." She grinned as she handed over the envelope I had given her. She returned to her computer. My wife simply stood there holding an envelope in her hand. The administrator looked up and said, "May I suggest you open this before heading to your room?" I did not ask her to say this, but it was a great idea. Ava just stood there, frozen. Richie retrieved the envelope from her and opened it. "Shit." He handed the stuff to Ava. She took them and examined the photographs of them kissing and Richie touching Ava's breasts. She opened a folded piece of paper containing an unsigned divorce petition and separation letter. A note was attached, stating that what you do in the next 30 seconds would be determined by whether or not you received a signed divorce petition. I had time for her, but it wasn't really important. It was her acts that counted. The pair behind them chuckled, prompting them to take action. Ava turned and rushed by me to the hotel's front door. She did not glance back. Richie just stood there, astonished. The administrator handed him an envelope and stated, "This is for you, Mr. Gault." The letter inside stated that your wife had gotten copies of images and details about the night you had planned. Good evening. It was unsigned. I went out. Ava dialed a number from her phone. I went to my Land Rover. My phone started playing her ringtone. She looked up and noticed me. I called. "Do you want a ride somewhere?" She dropped her suitcase and dashed at me. "I'm truly sorry." I opened the passenger door for her. "Get inside." As she climbed inside, tears flowed down her face. I went to get her suitcase and put it in the back of the Land Rover. "Sorry, honey." "Sorry." Elise provoked me into this fight and I ignored her. "What kind of car does he own?" "That's black audio over there." She pointed at a black Mercedes parked beneath the trees. "Are you certain this is a Merc?" "Yes, I am sure. He parked it there because he didn't want anyone seeing it. It was a Mercedes Cube SUV that cost £50,000. How could he afford it? His pay was probably similar to Ava's. I was curious if his wife had her own salary or if it was family money. But I had my own tasks to complete. I turned to Ava and said she should call him. She hurriedly removed the phone from her purse and handed it to me. Was it due to her lack of confidence or did she want to show me she was sorry? I placed the phone into my pocket. I had something else to do. I walked to the back of my Land Rover and pulled out a few tools. I have a Land Rover, therefore I'll need to carry tools. I assumed I had sent a planned email to my phone and crept to the back of his car looking for CCTV. It didn't disturb me very much. I merely risked receiving a suspended sentence or a fine for damage. My scissors removed all of the nipples on the tires and the Stanley knife caused incisions on the sidewalls of each tire. The tires are flat. They may not explode, but the vehicle will be unsafe to drive and all tires must be changed. The next stage was to use a pound-2 ball and hammer to strike the windshield right in the driver's line of vision. It turned out to be even better than I anticipated. I'm back in the Land Rover and the cracks are spreading in different directions. Can we simply go home now? Over time. I'm not finished here yet. Please. I didn't bother answering her before the hotel's front doors opened. Richie dashed out, dragging his suitcase. His phone sat in the crook of his shoulder as he attempted to switch off the car alarm. I managed to capture a photograph of it. The hotel name was apparent. I also sent this to his wife. My windows were down and I could hear him on the phone. Honey, it isn't what it seems. I'd never cheat on you. I'm just heading to the motel. I'm taking classes. You are aware of this. He took a stop. No, I was only helping her. He got into the car and noticed the state of the windshield. He got out of the car and continued talking on the phone. Honey, it is not me. I did not do it. Then his phone rang. He stared at the screen and I heard him exclaim, "Damn." I'm curious if there was a snapshot of him grabbing Ava's breasts or if they both entered the hotel with their arms around Ava's waist. Despite being shot from behind, it was obviously them. And why didn't you plan it? Did the mirror behind the reception desk show their faces, or was he leaving the hotel? He stated that he had just entered. It makes no difference if the damage has already occurred. Now it's time to leave. I started the car and drove away from the parking lot. Ava just sat there, crying. She attempted to speak with me multiple times, but to no avail. I kept hearing her whispering, "I'm so sorry." I watched her take herself and she turned to face me and asked, "Honey, can we stop and talk about this?" I wasn't in the mood to speak, but it had to happen. She hadn't noticed where we were, not while I am driving, the next stop on the expressway. When she peeked out, she realized we were driving south on the M5 rather than north, toward the house. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Please let your parents know that it will destroy them. You adore them. You would not do that to them." I growled at her. "I did not do it." She burst into tears again. I had no intention, but she had no idea what I told her. Did you think that would be one of the consequences of taking Richie as a lover? We arranged it so carefully that I would never be caught. It would only happen one time. You never know. You would not be hurt. It was only for the experience. All of the excuses and reasons came out through tears. I'm curious if these were the excuses Elise used to persuade her. Probably, I just thought. Did Elise Rich's pimp really find her lovers and arrange everything for him? This could be a fascinating discovery for the bank. I might have to assume it, even if it's not true. By we? I assume you're referring to yourself and Elise from the corner of my eye. I noticed her, not her head. I asked you. What do you think will happen if you're caught? Elise avoided jeopardizing her marriage this time. The next services are a little more than a mile away. I'll give you half an hour to persuade me not to take you to your mother and father. She started speaking. I raised my hand. She simply sat and looked out the window. We made it to the service station. I parked the car and instructed her to find a quiet corner while I went for a drink. I approached a kiosk with 2 teas. She dislikes tea in general, but especially at freeway rest stops. She took a sip and it pulled her up. Her face scrunched up as she waited for her latte. She looked at me and said, "Okay, I deserve this." She sat until I spoke. You have 27 minutes remaining. Again, time did not matter. The words did. I know I made a promise at the altar, and while I did not break it, I came close enough. That nothing changed. I lied to you, concealed information from you, and disregarded my wedding vows to you. So I'm not sure if you'll believe me, but I promise I'll never do this again. Let's say at once, almost got bitten. I will never see Diane again. If they do not do this, do not fire me. When Diane isn't playing the role of devil's advocate, she appears to be capable of thinking independently. Ava continued, Elise convinced me that it would be safe. You'll never know and you'll never be hurt. This should have been a one-off, exactly the same as hers. I've never had anyone but you and Dee convince me that the risk is worthwhile because it's so low if we plan ahead. Right. Doubts arose as soon as he picked me up from the bank and drove there. Richie was a little, how can you say, his driving style is energetic. Then I had a thought. What if we had a car accident or something similar? We hadn't expected it to destroy you. Richie made the reservation and I looked in the mirror behind the reception desk, I thought to myself. And you've said it enough. Do I like the person looking at me? And at that moment, I despised the person staring back at me. And I decided not to follow through by coming home and telling you how stupid I was. The receptionist smiled at me and I realized she knew I was going to cheat on my husband. I walked away, leaving only naked fear. So even if I stop now, it could be too late to save my marriage. I know you. If I went on, it would be over forever. I left and distanced myself from Richie. Then she told me my real name and handed me an envelope. I guessed what was inside. So you all knew. You must have informed the secretary. It didn't matter how she knew. It was still the look on her face. I told Ava how the secretary told me how they spot scammers and that she and Richie followed the exact script so I didn't have to tell her. She would have seen it right immediately. So have you thought about what would happen if you got caught? Yeah, but every time I brought it up, Elise just told me it's foolproof. You won't find out, so it won't hurt you. I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't even think about my parents and what they would think if they caught me. She informed me that this experience would be excellent for both of us, that I might discover something new that might make you pleased. Now I know that's crap, since you're wondering where I got it from. Elise planned everything. It worked for her. I just went with it, but we had it all planned out. No crazy fruity outfits, no late nights. All the late work was real, as we always assured you. I came home early from work. Girlfriend and Lee requested you to pick me up. We won't offer you any reason to fear. I see that this was part of your demise. You always dressed the same way, regardless of the weather or whether you were out with pals. This in itself indicated that you were concealing something. Coming home early from the gals, another strange night out, and your explanation of being bored didn't cut it, so I picked you up for happy hour so you could show your co-workers how much you loved me by hovering over me, and the love was wonderful. I am guessing it was with the person in charge of the party. Yes, because of what I intended to accomplish, but primarily because I adore you, and I enjoyed doing it with you, or compared to Richie. She glanced at me quizzically. No, this never occurred to me. I continued. I saw it all. I became concerned and began to monitor the situation. You arrived sooner than expected for your pickup. You were excellent. You hadn't made a mistake until 2 weeks ago at the contract victory celebration. You've asked me to take you up. I arrived at 10 and hung out in the corner. Nobody noticed me. I was watching you. You only danced with Richie once, and when he thought nobody was looking, he fondled your breasts. But you did not stop him. It would have been a slap in the face to someone else, so I had the impression that allowing him to handle it was a deliberate decision. Then, when you returned home last week and mentioned you were at the symposium, all of the caution lights lit up like a Christmas tree. Even if I hadn't noticed that pour, I would have followed you, but it provided me with a photo opportunity. You were too perfect. You have never been a minute late. That is not like you. Sometimes you're 5 or 10 minutes late when it doesn't matter. You've always called. If you work late, make sure to plan ahead of time. And I'm sure if I checked, you were always working. You asked me to pick you up from somewhere in the evening. You have never done this before. I generally offered, but you nearly insisted and always waited for me. I didn't need to reassure you as I usually do. And when you went to the party, you dressed sloppily rather than smartly. You even asked me to help you pack your clothes so that I could ensure there was nothing suggestive about them. You have never done this before. Did Elise have your erotic undergarments then? No, she was not there. I just snatched the nightgown. You saw me packing. You already know that I normally sleep naked. However, it did not feel right to be with another man. She looked down at her drink and remarked gently, so we weren't as smart as we thought. Damn, I feel stupid for following Elise's advice. She looked at me and proceeded, and you warned me several times. What a stupid fool he was. Tears streamed down her cheeks and spilled into the tea. She collected herself, took a sip of iced tea, and winced. I had my concerns about doing this. But when that secretary glanced at me, she knew I was going to cheat on my husband. I'd put myself. Then it dawned on me that this was incorrect on all levels. Honey, I'll do everything. I'll sign a post-nuptial agreement with a lawyer who will handle everything. I'll leave with nothing. I will do anything. I would not. But if you persist, I will even mention my mother, father, and yours. And if you take me back, I will make myself appear horrible while you will look good. I wouldn't do it to elderly people, not to any of them. Ava continued, this is not an excuse. I can't even claim I didn't know what I was thinking. I knew just what I was thinking. You'll never find out about it. It will not hurt you. However, for me, it will be an adventure. You already know it. I love to plan. And I became engrossed in planning this, with no notion how it would conclude. And every time I suspected Elise, she had a plausible alternative explanation or justification. I'm so sorry, darling. So wrong. A big question. Why? I asked. It was for the experience. You'll never know about it, and you'll never be hurt. Elise reassured me that it would be safe and enjoyable. I've never had anyone besides you, and it will only happen once. Elise persuaded me that it was worth the risk, because the risk was minimal as long as we planned for it. Take care, because she did it. We were aware of all the hazards, and now I believe Elise was so intoxicated that she got away with it. It would be the same for me, and she would be spending time with someone who had cheated on her husband with Richie. Sorry, this is just an afterthought that occurred to me. What were you intending to do when you decided not to go through with it? I asked her. I honestly don't know. My first instinct was to get a taxi and head to the symposium. There is still room for me, and I will not have to explain what a fool I have been. However, I knew that this would only make matters worse. An amusing concept sprung into my thoughts. I was only hoping you could leave work to come and save me. I know this all sounds made up, but I received the letter and you were aware of it. But that's what was going through my mind. I was so puzzled, honey. I felt awfully guilty. I am still trying to work things out in my thoughts. I was so stupid to let this happen. I'm very sorry, honey. I sat and thought for a long. I already knew what I wanted to do, but what did she want? What do you want to do now? I asked. I want my husband to take me home so I can start making up to him for being a stupid fool, for not listening to his counsel, and for believing I could do something. Not him. I've never disrespected him, but from his perspective it will appear that way, and I'll have to start rebuilding trust. I know it won't be easy and I'm not sure how to do it yet, but I can't. That is if I am not with him. Please, I ask you. I will get down on all fours right now, but just allow me the opportunity to earn your trust and make my foolish mistake in front of you. She took a big breath before continuing. I need to get Elise out of my life, and I believe I've lost my job. I'm not sure what to do with this yet, but if you take me home, I will have time to consider. We're back in the Land Rover, and I'm driving south again. Ava just stayed in the corner and cried until I got to the next light and turned onto the freeway, heading north, she said. She turned in her seat, glanced at me, and said, "Darling, thank you so much. I promise you won't regret it." She cried with all her heart and soul, but this time, I believe they were tears of joy. We had been driving on the road for about half an hour when Ava asked me, "Can I ask you a question?" I just nodded my head. "Why didn't you stop me if you were fully aware of the situation? I believe you are your own woman and you must make your own decisions. I warned you several times, but you chose to disregard them. You understand how I feel about cheating, so it had to be your decision. Thankfully, you made the correct decision in the end, but you harmed me, our marriage, and my belief in you. But if I didn't believe our marriage could be saved, we'd still be headed south." I heard sobbing on the opposite side of the river. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but she acknowledged her own weaknesses. And after you've identified your shortcomings, you'll know what you can do to correct whatever mistakes they allowed you to make. It was already late when we got home. All I wanted was a peaceful beer to let me forget about the day's worries. Ava went to bed. When I walked over, I slid next to her and she rolled over to embrace me. I was exhausted and fell fast asleep. Ava woke up early and gave me a cup of hot tea in bed. She was dressed for work but was still sleepy. She leaned down, kissed my lips, massaged my cheeks, and murmured, "Thank you, my dear. I love you." I had previously scheduled a day off from work, so I was just lounging around the house and garden. I wasn't sure what time Ava would return, but I got a message, arrive home about 2. It was too early for her. I wondered what occurred when she walked in. She got a large glass of red wine for herself and a lager for me. It was still early, but she appeared to need it. She told me what she did at work. Elise observed her enter and proceed to her manager's office. Elise went pale. She explained to her manager what had transpired and why she was not in Coventry. HR was called, and she restated what she had already told her manager. She told me she straightened up, fought back tears, and simply told them everything. She told them she had probably lost her husband and was about to resign. She was sent home and instructed to wait for a phone call. She walked out without looking at Elise. She told me that she went to see our lawyer and was able to schedule a meeting with a junior lawyer that afternoon, and that she had a draft post-nuptial agreement. She placed it in front of me. It specified that if she made love outside of our marriage, she would receive nothing. There was no mention of any acting I did outside of marriage. She handwrote the caption and included one free pass to compensate for my error. I added threesomes, 2 women including me. She continued, as long as one of the women is me. She showed it to me. I nodded and returned it to him. She autographed my addition. I took the pen from her and completed all of the scribbled notes. She smiled at me. She took a long gulp of wine and inquired, "Will you help?" "What do I tell Leon?" "He is not a friend, just an acquaintance, the husband of a former girlfriend." "I don't know what to do." I told her that I assumed we'd have to notify Leon, but in the end, it was beyond our control. Elise was sacked on the following Monday. The notification was not even a month old. Something about utilizing bank funds to reserve hotel rooms for personal encounters. Brittany and Rich's stay was not her first time booking a room. She was fired on the spot because she lied to Leon about why someone reported her and then gave her the truth. Her affair with Richie became public, and that happened frequently, not just once. True to his word, Leon has finally divorced Elise. She did not laugh. She departed. We do not know, and it doesn't matter where. Richie divorced and lost nearly everything under the prenuptial agreement. He suffered an accident. It was not me. I then discovered that Leon was out on a weekend golf excursion with some very close pals when this occurred. And we did it because Brittany stepped forward. She did not lose her job, but she received a reprimand. She worked so hard to re-establish my trust. Now that Elise was gone, I believed in her more than she did in herself and watched after her pals. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired.